Welcome, one and all, to another episode of the Gaming News Canada Show presented by the very good folks at GBG PLC. As always, I'm your host, Steve McAllister. Last week, Flutter Entertainment, the proprietors of FanDuel, announced it was tweaking its 2024 financial forecast after being somewhat blindsided by, quote, customer-friendly, end quote, NFL results. Flutter revealed that a period of less than business-friendly sports results in the US of A had offset strong player momentum south of the border. And that meant a drop in expected revenue for 2024 in the area of $370 million Amarican dollars. We have no idea what those numbers are for Ontario's business. For FanDuel's Ontario business. Almost 3 years into regulated sports betting in this province, getting data from regulators and operators is right there with finding a tic tac in a snowbank. This adjustment in the U.S. is believed to have been primarily the result of NFL parlay and same-game parlay results. As we head towards the divisional round of the NFL playoffs this weekend, we figured the time was right to bring back to the show the former longtime head of trading operations for Sports Interaction and current gambling industry consultant, the one and only Phill Gray. Phill, a very happy new year to you, and thanks once again for joining us here on the podcast.
Well, in Montreal, Steve, we like to say "Bodine" for we are a bilingual country, right? And best to you as well. And looking forward to a very interesting year in our industry.
Yeah, it's funny. It feels, Phil, that we could take that line every year when you and I have this conversation, and Amanda Brewer is often part of those discussions. And in January, we always talk about another interesting / dynamic, another news-filled year, and it does really feel that that's going to be the case over the next 12 months.
Oh, I tell you, Steve, we repeat myself a lot, but I've been in the business 23 years now. And if you could have sat me down 10 years ago and had a prediction market, which we're going to talk about as well, and told me what was going to be on the landscape right now for gaming, I would have said you were out of your mind. Just, it's happening at a breathtaking rate as well.
Phil, let's start with what I mentioned off the top, and that's the coverage of the Flutter Entertainment results this week, and the FanDuel taking a bit of a hit from NFL bettors. And as you and I were talking about before we hit the proverbial record button, FanDuel's not alone on this one.
They certainly are. Look at the rate favorites have not only won straight up but covered against the spread this year. Straight up this year, 71.7% on the faves. And look at this, faves against the spread, 54.3%. Now that doesn't sound a lot to the general public if you're not aware of trends in the NFL, but that's up, you would consider, about 2.5 points. So every teaser is hit as well, Steve, for the public. And just those straight up wins, that's just an incredible rate, 72% almost. You would expect that to be down in the high 50s in a typical NFL season. So no surprise that books across the board in game markets such as those have taken a big hit.
Phil, I wonder, how much, when you look at some of the performance of the so-called glamour teams this season, you look at, I would consider the Buffalo Bills a glamour team these days because of Josh Allen, and I'm sure there was momentum from the Detroit Lions season last year that carried into 2024, and we also know in Ontario here that how popular both the Bills and Lions are with bettors in this province. Again, Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs having another great regular season. How much of that is a factor in kind of bettors one-upping operatting
Oh, certainly. Results can be regional. Absolutely. You have got your West Coast, betting public. You've got, mid North America public. And then you've got the East Coast. And look, a lot of the books in Ontario, and it's the highest densely populated area in the world as well, around the Golden Horseshoe and outlying areas. So certainly you're going to see the client base jumping on their teams who are huge faves right now. And there just hasn't been any upsets. And that's trickled down into some of the games where you thought, maybe it's a good chance to take a bet on the dog, teams at plus 145 or plus 150. And even in those games, I've been betting them as well. And I'm not doing too well this year. It's it's not been a good year for the sharp better. Even if you're getting value on the price, you're still losing on dogs. So it goes across the board, but regional as well. I mean, you see it in Ontario. Same thing with with hockey teams. You'll see a way different price on say the Leafs at an Ontario book than you would actually see in Vegas.
Phill, I want to dig into and lean into your expertise on just around parlays and same game parlays and also win play betting and the impact that, again, every almost seems like almost every week we read an article, we listen to a podcast where they talk about the continuing popularity and growth among parlays and same game parlays and micro betting and play betting, et cetera, et cetera. How much has that expansion and growth impacted on the both the operators and bettors, negatively and positively?
Well, same game parlays for sportsbooks across the board that have implemented, which is not an easy technology to integrate into a book and have its own inherent in-house system that calculates the prices. It's the gift that keeps on giving for the sports books, Steve. Boy, again, if you had told me the kind of correlated parlays that are offered now, there's no way even 3-4 years ago they could have been offered, because you couldn't price them in the favor of the house, and now they can. And people, you see, Patrick Mahomes, touchdown passes and to win. That's something you couldn't even offer 3 or 4 years ago, because you couldn't price it correctly and move with the market, and have all your derived markets move with it at the same time, so that it affects those pricings. Now they can. The technology is there. It's just it's very difficult, again, to implement, but it's there, and a lot of resources have been put into it because it's so popular with the public betting. And look, at same game parlays right now are holding, for the books, 22, 23, 24%. Huge, massive. What you would expect to hold on a normal parlay about 15 to 16%. The same game parlays are way up there, over 20%. What interesting article though somebody had put out. What's going to happen though 1 month when they all hit? Are we going to take an unsustainable loss? No. I mean, certainly you might have a month where just the gods align and all the SGPs hit that everybody has bet on, and the books lose $500 million, but they can absorb it, and it goes against the kind of absurd profit right now they're making on them.
How invested are sharp bettors, Phill, with parlays and same game parlays and in play betting?
Very interesting, actually, that you asked that. A couple of years ago, and when same game parlays first came out, the pricing was wrong, and it was I hesitate to say wrong, but there was a wide variance between sports books. Between you could get one SGP at plus 250 somewhere, but other books were offering plus 375. And a lot of people were using plug and play solutions for same game parlays, which again were hesitate to say poorly constructed, but they didn't reflect your exposure and your liability in the market, and the price wasn't moving. It was kind of static. Whereas now, no, it's straight across the board. Everybody's using the same kind of technology. And they aren't true odds. When you're betting a same game parlay, they're in the favor of the house. I mean, all betting is in the favor of the house, but to the extent in same game parlays right now, they're quite a bit in favor of the house. So a couple of years ago, to your question, were sharp bettors looking at them? Absolutely. I knew a couple of guys a couple of years ago. That's all they did every day, was going around looking for variance in prices and hitting them, or even getting an ARB. Where you could bet one side, one at one book and one at the other, and guarantee yourself a 4 or 5% profit. That's not there anymore. The books adjusted to that.
Is there? Do the NFL playoffs present an opportunity for the sports books to kind of right the ship, Phill, for lack of a better term?
Well, you can't guarantee it, Steve. I've been in that position many times. We've had a poor season, and we'll all be sitting there though, but we still got the playoffs to go. And sometimes you do see some big dog upsets, and especially with wild card weekend now, where you've got Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday games, which is new in the last couple of years. You've got games every day. Liability builds up on those parlays. It's unbelievable, So you get, if the three faves cover on the Saturday, boy, you're sitting there on the Sunday looking at massive losses without an upset. And look at the trend this year. Is it going to continue? If that's the case, I wouldn't want to be sitting there again on a Monday morning looking at the faves gone 5-0 on a Saturday and Sunday, and you're sitting on just absolute massive losses.
I was going to say a very wise friend of mine who's a bettor years ago told me that there's a reason why teams finish in first place and are successful, and there's a good chance that when you get to the playoffs, that those are going to be the teams that are going to be there at the finish. And I think we've seen, whether it's the NFL, the NHL, the NBA, that does tend to be true more often than not.
I think we had a few years ago, we had a run of very good years for the sports books, so they shouldn't complain to this too much this year. If they come out, they're still going to come out in the black. Come on, but we had a run of very good years, and parity had come to the NFL finally. In some sense, for about half a decade, dogs could win. Teams weren't that bad. Look at this year. There's quite a difference between the top and the upper echelon in the NFL.
Hey Phill, what advice would you give to casual bettors, but people like me that do it for fun and some entertainment, just in terms of are there bets that maybe they aren't making that they should, not again to, not necessarily to win, but just to have as part of the enjoyment experience, and is there advice you would give them on things they should steer away from?
Well, a couple of years ago, I would have said, have 2 or 3 or 4 accounts. You might see some difference in pricing. Unfortunately, you don't see that anymore. Everybody kind of follows the consensus line, and this also goes, Steve, to the books. Getting killed this season in the NFL is nobody moves on their liability. It's we'll let the chips fall. We just stay with the market price, the consensus. And there's no contrarian lines out there. Everybody just we'll win in the end is kind of the MOI, and nobody's willing to stick their neck out and reduce their liability. As far as my advice for the casual bettor, I still go back. Bet the team you think is going to win. I mean, if you have a fave and you're only putting down, this is for small bettors, $5, $10, $15, $20,
Right.
Bet your favorite team, and it makes the game a lot more fun, does it not? And that goes to, what we're supposed to be about in this industry is have a couple of bucks on your team. It makes it more fun. Even if you only bet $10, it comes with the third period, you're up 2-1, you're on the edge of your seat. So go that way. I mean, if you want to get into, sports betting as lack of a better word, again, repeat myself, professional, you still got to look for value if it's out there, and those come in secondary markets, not in main game markets. Look for halves, first periods, correct score, stuff like that. That you may have, you have to do some research. You've got to sit there and look around. It's not just you're not just going to pick that out of the pile. You've got to do some research and put some time into it. So if you're serious about betting, put the time into it. You can't just load up your favorite book and pick something off and think it's going to win. If you're taking it seriously, if you're doing it for fun and just because you want to watch the game, then certainly do that.
Hey Phill, I mentioned off the top about there's been a lack of transparency around the results of the operators on Ontario, and we usually hear different reasons for that, whether we're talking to people at iGaming Ontario or the operators themselves. A reminder that 85% of the revenue or 85% of the wagers made in this province are iGaming products, and so I just wonder, from looking at it from a business perspective, of, the NFL playoffs, I would assume, are a very, very small portion of the business, whether you're a FanDuel, a PointsBet, an OLG, etc. here in Ontario.
Yeah, I mean, sports betting, though, I mean, generally the hold is higher. Yes, for every dollar you're going to take, in sports betting, you're going to take $4 in casino. But generally across the board for casino on a daily basis, you're going to hold about 3%. Massive dollars, yes, absolutely. But it's the engine that keeps everything churning, right? So you go into sports betting, and we're only taking 20% of the whole revenue, but the hold can be much higher. You can hold, on any given day, sometimes 15, 20% on a really great day. You could also lose 7 or 8%, very bad day. Generally, the hold in the sports book would be about 8% across the board in all sports. So that's a significant amount of money, even though the dollars spent are less than iGaming. iGaming still drives it. So maybe that could be part of the hesitancy on some of the big players in Ontario to deliver results.
Hey Phil, this question might be a bit of a pardon the pun gamble, given that we're recording this before the wild card week in the NFL, and this podcast will come out after that first weekend of the NFL postseason. But is there a story that you would you're keen to follow during the NFL playoffs? Not, and it doesn't have to be from a betting perspective, just simply as a sports fan.
It would be, though. I'm looking at that very closely right now. Steelers in Baltimore. Baltimore -9.5. Now go back and look at the history of those two teams. Mike Tomlin still, is he going to come up with something? And could we have one of our big upsets of the season right there? You never know. Plus 380 right now at some books. You'd probably get 400 at some. That'll go down next to game time. If you like the Steelers, I'd kind of get on that. Now I'm on the Steelers to go in there and win that straight up. I'm even forgetting the points. I think Lamar Jackson, even though who he is, something about that I like, because you throw $10 at that, you win 40, right? Hey, if you got $100, I'm sure you got some Christmas money from your mom. You got $100 sitting around. Throw that in the pot, and $400. There's your round at Harbortown in a few weeks.
Hey Phil, yeah, I wish. Hey Phil, last question on the NFL playoffs, and we've been to sports conferences over the last 3 years where we hear executives from the professional sport leagues talk about the positive impact that legal sports betting has had on fan engagement with their leagues. Are you a disciple of that? Are you a little? Is that something you're a little cynical about, or which is there a case being made that sports betting has driven up engagement around sports?
I would say yes, for sure. Just as the population is growing, that's quite obvious. But again, operating. I operated in the gray market for 20 years. The engagement has always been there, and it wasn't going away. I sat there, a decade ago and watched, not even a decade ago, and watched the 4 commissioners from the major North American leagues stand up, and what a scourge it was going to be on the game, ruining the integrity of the game. There's no way that we could let this happen. Why? Because they hadn't figured out how to make money off it. Now they are. So, of course, the public line is going to be how great betting is for sports. But again, we're getting into the weeds now of how it does affect things. Look, in player props and some outlier stuff with players doing some nefarious stuff. I think that's minimal and will continue to be minimal with the checks and balances in place. But it's just interesting to see the turnaround of the major sports. You were going to get hair on the back of your palms 6 years ago, but now it's betting's for everybody. Great, have fun.
Hey, I want to talk to you. You spoke with Mark Keith for a story on Casino.org earlier this week on the launch of the TGL, and it's funny. We're recording this podcast on Thursday morning. My wife and I last night watched I guess about the first hour of the first TGL match between Xander Schauffele's team and I think it was Shane Lauer, Auberg, and
Yeah.
Wyndham Clark. And I have to say, as someone who enjoys watching sports, I really think that Tiger Woods and Rory McIlroy, the two founders of the TGL, are really onto something. I think a lot of these sportsmen looking for ways to appeal to a younger audience, and this to me ticks off all the boxes. Where you play a game in under 2 hours. It's like rapid fire golf. There's technology involved. There's obviously a betting component to this, but now that you've had a chance to watch a bit of the TGL, and after speaking with Mark, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I was very interested to tune in to the first game, and I even stayed up till 9 o'clock, which I usually don't. And watch. I lasted about 40 minutes. I found it very staid and stoic. And watching guys hit into a simulator, even though it's fantastic simulator, the technology for spin and stuff like that, they really nail it. Because if you've played on public simulators, and you hit a great shot, and you go, oh, why is that in the water?
Right.
They've certainly solved that. I thought it. I was underwhelmed by it. It's certainly. I think I'll watch when Tiger's playing, just because it's Tiger. But the personalities in golf, I don't know that they're that engaging to a youthful audience. Especially non-golfers are going to tune in to watch. I'm an avid golfer, an avid fan of the game, have been for my entire life, and I don't think I'm going to get engaged in it. Again, when Tiger plays, yes, I'll watch. That goes to betting as well. If Tiger's involved in something, I was mentioning that with Mark. Unlike anyone else in sports I've ever seen, any team, any individual, anything, Tiger moves the needle when he's involved by 4 to 5 times. Your expected handle in anything. So I know from the first week there was very little interest across the sports books in it. I don't think they did the greatest job in getting it out there and promoting it. It's golf, but still, it's there. And hey, $500 million valuation company. The purse is about $23 million, about $2.5 million to each player to show up, one Tuesday a week for the next and hit into a simulator. I'd be surprised if it takes off beyond anything above a niche level. For live in-play betting, which drives a lot of in-play golf, the pace is fast. The format is a little wonky. To get prices out there and have them up for a period of time with no latency that clients could get in and bet it, I don't really see it happening. I'm pretty sure.
Hey, gaming news guys! Are you ready to win a bigger share of Canada's rapidly expanding gaming market? Then GBG are ready to help. As the global leaders in identity verification, GBG partner with over 60% of iGaming Ontario brands to help them onboard more players, maximize match rates, and deliver FinTrack compliance. Visit gbgplc.com today and talk to the trust experts. I do wonder if there's an opportunity for golfers, and again, I think of Smiley Kaufman and how his brand just went ballistic last year with the work he was doing, I think with NBC on golf broadcasts. And I do wonder, given what's going on with the PGA Tour and Live Golf right now, if there might be an opportunity for a golfer who's got some personality to emerge and use the TGL as a way to launch their brand.
That's what I was thinking, actually. The other day after watching it, as I said, the personalities are they're a little staged, Steve. Well, why wouldn't you have? I don't know the negotiations to bring in players of that actually would take the time out of the schedule to come in and play, because it is live, it's not taped. Why wouldn't you have brought in Mickelson? Why wouldn't you brought in John Daly? Why wouldn't you brought in a Smiley Kaufman? And why wouldn't you bring in Ali Trevino and let him hit from the forward tee?
Right.
And bring in that kind of, they're looking for that fan engagement with a different generation. I don't think you're going to get it with these guys in the standard golf shirt, a little bit of smile, a little bit of fist bump, and maybe the odd little bit of banter back in there. I don't know. put a wet bar there, let them play for shots or cash on the table or something like that. Of course, I mean, I'm being kind of, outlandish there, but something I just didn't see it from the excitement factor that they're going to grow the game from this. But hey, he's Tiger and I'm me, right?
Hey Phill, you and I've spoken often for almost 4 years now on women's sports in this place with sports betting operators, and we enter a new year with the PWHL playing its first full regular season, and we've got the Northern Super League, the Women's Soccer League in Canada is going to launch in 2025. We did see the impact that Caitlin Clark had last year on women's sports, both with her performance in the NCAA and also in the WNBA. I'm just curious, have your thoughts changed at all on women's sports and how attractive they will be to sports bettors this year?
Well, let's go. I mean, this kind of goes to what we're going to talk about with some of the prediction markets and that. What's the median age, and gender for the typical sports bettor in North America or across the board? 37-year-old male. Certainly, you have a good portion of your client base that are outside of that, but it's still, you would take, let's be honest, certainly wagering has gone up on the WNBA with Caitlin Clark, significantly, dramatically, absolutely, exponentially. But on, you would look at, say, if there's a WNBA game on against an NBA game, and you're going to, right now, with the increased popularity of the NBA, let's say just, throw out $20,000 is going to be bet on the WNBA game. You'll have $120,000 bet on the NBA game. Even though a lot of the derived markets and secondary markets are now attached to the WNBA, you just it's a significant part, but of a sportsbook's revenue. But it's still I would consider it still very much a niche sport, a niche betting practice. Even though, but the numbers have gone up, absolutely. Whereas, I use that number. Say if you're taking $20,000 right now on a WNBA game, 3 years ago you're probably taking $5,000, right? So exponential increase, not to be ignored.
Is there maybe an opportunity for operators to lean into, I think, these emerging superstars in women's sports? Again, you think of a Caitlin Clark, an Angel Reese. Look at the year that Nelly Corda had on the LPGA Tour last year, and here in Ontario with Brooke Henderson and her popularity, and Sabalenka on the women's tennis tour right now. Is that something where maybe the sports books, you focus more on the athletes and less on the teams or the events?
It's tough to come up with if you want to get into individual player props, and have the historical data there to come out with true pricing and not leave yourself exposed to sharp bettors, which absolutely. I mean, I know a guy, I know a few people, I keep saying that, but who was just killing it on WNBA first halves. The last couple of years, numbers were off right across the books. There wasn't a consensus line. He was going in and hitting value on them. That's all he was doing, and he was making a really good buck at it. It's a lot harder with women's professional leagues and to come up with solid numbers across the board that you can say, yes, that's a consensus number. That's the right number. So. Hey, you went to my question. I go to your question about people looking to bet some edges. Look at some of the women's professional leagues where odds are being offered. They vary widely in some places.
Hey Phill, just on the Northern Super League, I mean, would books offer basic lines on a new women's soccer league this year, just because of what you mentioned, that there's obviously not going to be a whole lot of data on these teams and these athletes?
Oh, certainly. There'll be a general number that a couple of the feed providers will come out with, and everybody will post that same number. They'll copy and paste it, and then move on some action to see where they're wrong. If there's some guys that or girls who are betting that they your number is wrong. If it's if you put it out there, they'll bet it, Steve. I said that with Mark as well. With the TGL, will there be interest? Certainly, there'll be interest. Absolutely, if it's there and it's posted, people will bet it.
That's a perfect segue, Phil. It's almost like we planned this to shifting to political betting. And Jeff Sakotny wrote for Covers this week as we record this podcast on the growing interest in betting on politics. And we certainly saw that around the U.S. election at the end of 2024. I guess for me, two questions. One is, if you put on your former head of trading operations hat working for an operator, just your thoughts on political betting. And then I guess secondly, why the appetite on political betting is just because it just seems politics is such a hot button issue right now. I think that's always been the case in the US, but it feels like it's even ratcheted up a notch.
Well, certainly was the personalities involved, is it not, Steve? I mean, 2020 U.S. election was the single most bet event in online sports betting history. Wasn't even close, like over $4 billion wagered worldwide on the exchange markets, and also as sports books. I've never seen anything like it. We were sitting on. I go back to 2016. We were sitting on a huge Hillary Clinton liability, and look what happened. The contrarian won, and the same thing in 2020. Trump was supposed to win. We sat on a massive Trump liability. Like that is the single biggest liability I have ever seen in my 20 years at a sports book. We were sweating that one out, and look, the markets got it wrong again and again in 2024. Kamala Harris was trading at plus 150 on election day, right?
Yeah. No, the books got it right on that one.
I mean, and we're going to talk about this as well. But the prediction markets, they're 3 for 3 in the last U.S. general elections, and again, it's the personalities involved, and you're going to see it in the Canadian election. This, such the anti-Trudeau sentiment across the country that with the advent of social media, and a lot of people are just jumping on it. So the personalities are there. I don't think you would have seen that with Stephen Harper versus John Manley or something like that. Again, but we've got some rock and roll in politics now, right? So it's in your face all the time, and it's a great, especially as you get closer to elections. It's a sign up boom, because the person who's never bet before. Whoa, wait! I can go online and bet that. Wow. But politics betting, massive, absolutely massive.
Jeff's article refers to the pending Liberal leadership race, and that there are sports books outside of Canada offering action on that right now. None inside the country. How much of a danger is there to operators in Canada, Phil, to offer that as a product?
I don't see any danger. There's no. I believe, as far as I know, Ontario has no specific prohibition on that. Now, I could be wrong. Somebody could call me on this, but I don't believe they do. They may choose with the government lotteries and Proline not to offer it because they're a crown corporation, I guess, for a better sense of the word. But it's certainly, I think, even a licensed operator you can offer that, absolutely. I was taking bets on the Canadian general election 15 years ago.
Well, I'll check the AGCO regulations and just we'll confirm that in the text that goes out with the podcast, Phil. But I'm like 95% sure that you're correct on that one. I want to end the podcast just talking about what I'll call the crypto conundrum. And we know right now that the crypto is not legal under the AGCO regulations for the market here in Ontario. We read, I'm sure you followed the coverage last month at the end of the year about, I believe it's crypto.com, when now is launching you can bet or make predictions now on crypto.com, I believe on sporting events. I want to read you a quote from Chris Grove, who's been following this.
He's great. He's great, by the way. I follow him. He's fantastic.
Yeah, this issue very closely. Chris was on the podcast last month, but I think he wrote this in a LinkedIn post before Christmas. Quote: prior to this, meaning that the announcement about crypto.com getting more involved in betting. Prior to this, DraftKings and FanDuel were looking over their shoulder at European operators, wondering, quote, is Bet365 going to invest more in the U.S. market? End of quote. Looking over their shoulders at the traditional operators, wondering, quote, is BetMGM going to make a push? End quote. Or, quote, will Hard Rock be able to leverage their Florida monopoly to become a national competitor? End quote. And maybe looking over their shoulder at some of the sports stakeholders like Fanatics with large user databases that may be relevant and may cross-sell. Now they're having to look to an entirely new roster of competitors who are far closer in many ways to the core market that they serve. Your reaction to that quote?
Well, absolutely. I mean, they have massive databases, far larger than even FanDuel and DraftKings have. Where are we at though with it? Product gap. If you're going to do a prediction market, it's a single event. That's it. Well, I can go to DraftKings and bet that same game 1,000 times in different ways. I don't see it in 2025 being a threat to the industry. I think beyond it will come. And we go back to we were talking about what's the median what's the median average for the client base? Well, it's the same in crypto. 37-year-old male. Can we get them to come from what they're doing to betting sports markets? Again, it's the product gap. You're going to have to invest a ton in having something that's going to compete with a FanDuel or DraftKings, or do they go the route of merger and acquisition and just take up a bunch of books with already existing platforms where they can just plug it into what they're offering and put it out there? Legality, legislation dealing with crypto, not a regulated currency. That'll be with the new administration in the United States. They've made a lot of noise about it. It absolutely could happen. I don't see it happening in 2025, but beyond, you would have to say for sure it's going to happen. There's been no noise in Canada yet from the federal government about we're going to be into an election. Maybe possibly with the new government, they may take the conservative stance that's happening in the United States that they want to make a push for it. Until that time, I wouldn't be too worried if I was FanDuel or DraftKings about crypto.com.
Right, and you don't see the AGO changing its policy with regards to crypto in the short term
until it's a federally regulated currency. They're not going to allow it. No way. No, absolutely no way. But having said that, now there are books operating in Canada and provinces that are not regulated that take crypto.
Hey, Phill,
we won't say who.
Last question. Last few weeks as we've been recording interviews for the podcast, we've kind of asked people to dig out their crystal ball and offer some predictions for 2025. I just wonder if there's a story or something that you're following closely or that you want to stick your neck out as you often do and make a prediction for the next 12 months.
Leafs aren't going to win the cup. How's that? Boy, I go what we were talking about, earlier in just the last 10 years, and if you could have told me, what's happening now, and I would have said, you've had a little too much time to go home. Just crazy, Steve. I don't know, boy, where it's going. We'll see. Going to be super interesting with Alberta because it's just not a lot of noise around it. But what's going to actually happen there? Who's going to be there? Who are they going to allow in? And everything. I know some books are chomping at the bit to get in there because Alberta is, certainly smaller population, but the NGR, net gaming revenue per client there is much higher because they have more disposable income and less taxes. So there's some biggies waiting to get in there. And I'm following that as well. Fanatics coming into Canada this year. And again, they're not, I don't think DraftKings and FanDuel are too worried about them yet. But they've certainly made a big gain in the U.S. I think they could make some noise in Canada and give the biggies a run for their money. Great band, great brand, great name. Which is important. Your brand name, it sticks with people. And Fanatics. It's perfect. So that'll be interesting to watch. Other than that, who's going to win the cup this year, Steve?
Yeah, that's always. I mean, I think you wonder if maybe this year where Edmonton they got so close last year, Phil, and they seemed haven't taken a step back, and I also wonder because Florida's played so much hockey now the last 2 to 3 years, but I think there's going to be they're beating new champion.
I'm going to be a bookie again. What price would you like on Edmonton to win the cup, Steve? Name your price. I'll take
your money. even money?
Huh?
Even money?
Oh, absolutely. Even money. There we go.
Yeah, and I was gonna say I did reach out to someone at Fanatics this week because I read the same article you did about Fanatics in Canada, and they said that was a bit premature, and that coming to Canada wasn't on Fanatics' radar in the short term right now. So that's what I was told by.
No, not short term. Not short term, but they will. They will at some point. They have a great brand.
Yes, I agree. Yeah,
excellent brand. So they're gonna fill their coffers in the States for a while, and I would think certainly they're gonna look north of the border at some point and come in. And I think they could come in quickly and gain some significant market share above and beyond what some of the other books underneath FanDuel and DraftKings have right now. I think they could come in and do very, very well.
Yeah, and I've heard with regards to Alberta, I've heard some skepticism from some conversations I had over the holidays that they may not have their act together to launch a market in 2025, and
wow.
The feeling you get is that could be a missed opportunity because, as you know, Phil, it takes time to launch product in new markets, and it's pretty quiet in the U.S. right now. I think Missouri's going to have regulated gambling land in 2025. There's some talk about Minnesota possibly launching a market, though that may not happen that quickly. So it feels like the time is right for Alberta to launch a regulated environment. It sounds like the Conservative government just isn't far enough down the road and may not be able to pull that off in time for 2025. I find
that interesting because they did have a model with Ontario that they could have almost done a cut and paste with, and then put it out to potential licensees who had gone through that process in Ontario, and it would have been much quicker this time. So I'm not privy to what's happening there as far as why it's taking so long. But I don't know if it's taking that long. I mean, Ontario was, I believe, the better part of 2.5 years from the first time. The first rumblings were. And when I say rumblings, I mean actual paperwork were being put out to potential licensees, and then that process took about 8 months for our sportsbook to go through the entire process. It's the audit process, and which goes through every department in your company. It's very tedious, very resource intensive. It takes you have to pull people away from other jobs every day to go through that compliance process. But again, I think Alberta. I don't know what their conversation was in Ontario and whether Ontario was willing to share what the documentation and all the tools that they use. But yeah, certainly that's new to me. You don't think 2025, Alberta?
I just wonder, Phil, how, and again, this is me talking. I just wonder how beholden is the provincial government to the Lottery and Gaming Association in Alberta right now, and we saw what happened in Ontario, where OLG was told they weren't going to have a seat at the table, and the AGCO went out and created iGaming Ontario, and we haven't seen that happen yet in Alberta, and that's probably the one thing I think, and you probably know better than I do. I think that's the one thing that would have to happen, where you would have to create that third party to do the conduct and manage thing that IGO has done here in Ontario.
Yeah, it's extremely complex as well, and political infighting, which clogs up the process as well. But again, I go back. They Ontario set the model, that worked, right? Why wouldn't you just have a cut and paste and do what they did and throw it out there? I mean, you're going to win.
Yeah, and And that, Phill, that's the other thing. Like you and I, we've spoken many times, and along with Amanda and Chris Abbott and people that have been on this podcast over for almost 4 years now, is that everybody, as soon as the Ontario market opened in April 2022, everybody was talking consolidation. When's it going to happen? And here we said, April's going to be the third anniversary, and as you and I have this conversation on a Thursday morning, there are still 50 operators in Ontario, and that consolidation hasn't happened.
Yeah, I mean, they're struggling absolutely to gain a market share. But again, it goes back to Steve. iGaming. You can go in if you so even if you only have say a 3 or 4% market share in Ontario, that's a considerable amount of money. When you take in your iGaming dollars, your sportsbook might not be doing that, but certainly your casino is, if it's there, and you got a good product, which a lot of folks do. That could be something actually looking forward to. You're asking for predictions in 2025 and beyond. Will we see a real shrinking of the market? I had said I thought we would a lot more than we have by now. It's going to come at some point, I think, especially if crypto comes in. That could be actually a very interesting insight. With could crypto prediction market books like that come in and snap up a bunch of smaller outliers in some of these game markets that already have the platform, right? They already have the product, so they don't have to develop it themselves, which is a huge cost. It's gonna be a lot of fun, Steve.
It is. Hey, Phill, before we let you go, I just want to give you a chance to plug some of the work that you're doing right now on behalf of Mike Richards, who's appear ready to get back into the Canadian sports talk radio or sports talk podcast market.
Yeah, looking forward to that a lot. We've got a few obstacles in our way, but he's going to be back on the air soon in major markets. The Raw Mike Richards show, and if you've listened to Mike in the past, he's got a few things to say, and we're hoping to change that. He's going to change, the sports talk market in Canada. There's nothing like him in Canada right now. He's his own unique guy, and he's just got so many contacts across the interest. It's going to be a lot of fun and a fast-paced show. Really looking forward to that. So I'm working in a marketing role for that right now. Can't wait for it. I love Mike. He's been through a lot. He was the guy at TSN. A decade ago. A few things happened in the industry, but he's back, and it's going to be out there in a couple of weeks, having a lot of fun with it.
And the man who does a better Victor Newman impersonation than Victor Newman himself.
Right. Mike's got this new. He does Peyton Manning pretty well too. So he's got a couple of bits where he goes around to different stores in the area and Peyton asks. He goes, it's funny stuff. You don't see it right now in the market. I mean, sports broadcasting right now is so kind of boring, and everybody's there's going to be a gaming aspect to the show for sure, but we're not going to, a couple of people sitting behind the desk. I got anytime TD score -110. It's not going to be anything like that.
Phill Gray, we always appreciate your unfiltered view on what's going on in the gambling industry, and as always, when we have these conversations with you, and we're missing your sidekick Amanda Brewer today, and
yes,
we're always a little bit wiser coming away from these conversations. So thank you so much for being back on the Gaming News Canada show presented by GBG PLC. Here's wishing you a lot of birdies and good health in 2025. And we really look forward to getting you back here again soon.
Always a pleasure, Stephen. Thanks for having me. I miss Amanda because she's always the voice of reason. We're kind of right. We're the yin yang, right? So hopefully we'll have some chats with her in the new year. And best to you and everybody out there. It's going to be a great year.
Yeah, we'll bring the gang back together when Amanda returns from Ice Barcelona in a couple of weeks, Phill.
Great stuff. Can't wait.
That's it for this episode of the Gaming News Canada show presented by GBG PLC. We're grateful, as always, to Phill Gray for appearing on the podcast, which you can find on Substack at gamingnewscanada.ca and also on the various podcast platforms. Thank you so much to all of our listeners and subscribers for supporting Gaming News Canada, and we will see everybody again very, very soon.